So a little bit about what we're going to go through today. Just going to run through a little bit about the history of TG20. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure most of you do, and particularly what's changed in the latest edition. So a little bit about CADS in case you don't know us. As Simon says, we developed TG20, 13 and 21 with the NASC. We've been going for more than 40 years now in developing construction software and construction services, calculation services and drawings. There are more than 500 of us structural engineers, software developers and detailers. A little bit about me. I was the principal author of the TG20, 13 and 21 operational guides, and also the sort of principal software developer of the eGUIDE in both cases too. So a little bit about the origin of TG20. As you know, the British standard for scaffolding, BS 5973, was withdrawn back in 2003 and replaced with the European standard. If any of you have seen the European standard, you'll see it's not really a replacement document. It's very much a document about the calculation of scaffolds by analysis and not a practical guide to scaffolding. So back in 2005, the NASC stepped in to develop TG20 very much in the style of 5973 to kind of ease the transition. So providing very similar guidance to 5973, but backed by the requirements of the Eurocode. And in 2013, we significantly redeveloped TG20 with the NASC into a broader document for the scaffolding industry, and particularly to enhance the range of TG20 compliant scaffolds. And as you'll see today, we've extended that again for the latest edition. So TG20 is, it's a couple of things really. So it's a practical guide, a good practice for tube and fitting scaffolding, and it's really intended for anybody in the construction industry who are involved in scaffolding, whether the procurement, supply or use. But it also contains definitions of TG20 compliant scaffolds. And these are scaffolds that have been designed by calculation to the Eurocode, to EN 12811, and are recognised by the HSE as standard configurations of scaffolding. What I mean by that is related to this paragraph from the work at height regulations that says that strength and stability calculations for scaffolding should be carried out unless the scaffold is assembled in conformity with a generally recognised standard configuration, which means essentially design calculations required for all scaffolds unless there are a sort of recognised standard configuration, such as a TG20 compliant scaffold. Now the parts of TG20, we have the operational guide, which is a good practice guide. It's sort of full colour, intended to be easy to read, with lots of good practice guidance that comes from the range of technical and health and safety guidance from the NASC. It's also supported by structural research and calculations. So wherever we're providing guidance, it's sort of backed up by the research we did principally in TG 2013 that we've extended for the latest guide. TG20 also comes with a design guide. This is very much like the TG20 05 and 08 guide, sort of based on 5973, but again, expanded and extended. And again, it sort of covers two parts really. It gives the basis for design of the TG20 compliant scaffolds, so that it's not a black box and you can sort of see how they were designed. But it also gives guidance for the bespoke design of special scaffolds that are not TG20 compliant. And again, we've updated this for the latest edition. We've also updated the user guide, which is the pocket guide for site operatives. It's now significantly expanded actually for all the new TG20 compliant scaffolds. And the other thing we've updated quite significantly are the TG20 compliant sheets. So the purpose of a compliant sheet is to demonstrate that a scaffold is compliant and therefore doesn't require a bespoke design. We've substantially redesigned the compliant sheets for the latest edition. So previously they were largely sort of text and bullet points really, but now we've redesigned them with an illustration on the front page and then the details of the compliance on the second page. And I've got an example here. So on the front sheet, you have a sort of a plan, a section and an elevation of one representative elevation of the scaffold. And there you can see, for example, the lift boarding, the tie pattern. You can see there's a bridge there and so on. Down at the bottom, we have what we call the TG20 compliance badges. And these highlight the principal compliance criteria. So you don't have to hunt through all the details anymore to pick out, for example, the maximum height of the top lift, the tie duty, the leg load, and so on. And then on the right-hand side, you have the sign-off area, which you can use to provide details about the scaffold, the site, and the client. You can state who produced the compliance sheet, and also, if your site procedures require it, you can also provide a name and a signature for a checker, and that's someone who's checked to make sure the compliance sheet is appropriate for the scaffold. And then finally, at the bottom, you can put some notes and company logo. And then on the back, you have the detailed compliance criteria, which are very much like the TG2013 compliance sheets. So you need to read these along with the illustration because they give more specific details. So for example, the compliance badge will state the maximum loading, but it's in the detailed compliance criteria that state the maximum number of loaded lifts, for example. Now, because this particular compliance sheet has a bridge, we also have additional compliance sheets, just like in TG2013, that give more details for each of these additional features. So, for example, here, just like in the previous edition, you can see details of the lacing and bracing of the beams, minimum beam specification, and so on. Now, to produce the new TG20 compliance sheets, we've significantly redeveloped the TG20 eGUIDE as well. It's now available online in a new portal, which I'll show you soon. It's available through a web browser, so you need an internet connection, but it means you can use it now on any compatible device. So whether that's a Windows or Mac computer or laptop, or an iOS or Android phone, tablet, or other device. And also for the first time, the ePortal provides electronic versions of the operational guide and design guide, which for TG2013 were only available as printed books. So I'll show you this soon anyway, and give you a run through. But you access the ePortal through the web browser with a login. So it's a subscription-based system. Once you log in, you have access to the eGUIDE, the operational guide, and the design guide. But the idea is that over time, the ePortal will become the home for all of the NASC guidance. So the intention is to extend it with further technical safety guidance and further apps along the style of the eGUIDE as well. The operational guide is very much in the style of the printed book. So again, the sort of full color pages, but there's a table of contents and a search facility as well. And the design guide very much like the printed book in the sort of black and white and grey scale style. But again, with a table of contents, a search facility and hyperlinks too. Now the eGUIDE, just like in TG2013, you can choose your TG20 compliant scaffold to get started with, and I'll show you this soon. But the thing that's significantly different is that even though the basic operation is the same, choosing one feature of your scaffold per screen to kind of click through and generate your compliance sheet, with the new eGUIDE, we generate the illustration of the scaffold as you go along, so you can see the scaffold building up. And in addition to that, we've extended TG20 with a wider range of compliant scaffolds. So firstly, tied independent scaffolds can now have up to 3 inside boards with special compliance sheets for those. We've extended bird cages, so they can now be external and subject to wind loading. We've put in TG20 compliance sheets for mobile towers, and we've also significantly replaced the TG20 compliant loading bays. Because one of the main pieces of feedback we had from TG2013 was that the loading bay wasn't really wide enough to accommodate the gate. So we provided 2 different widths, one that's 6 boards wide with 2 inside boards between the loading bay and the scaffold, or one that's 10 boards wide over 3 bays. And in addition to that, we provided an additional option for loading bays without beams. which are suitable for smaller loading bays with a reduced bay length. The other thing that we changed in the eGUIDE is you can now produce a compliance sheet for a part-boarded scaffold. In TG 2013, they were covered, but the compliance sheet was conservative and was fully boarded, so the leg loads were higher than needed. So that's been improved. And the other thing just to bear in mind is we have made quite a few changes to the maximum heights of the TG20 compliant scaffolds and also the leg loads and tie duties. This is mostly to enable scaffold designers and temporary works engineers to be able to check the results by hand using the information in the design guide. Whereas in TG 2013, some of these values could only be replicated with an advanced structural analysis. We were very pleased actually to have the support of the HSE during the development of TG 2021, as with TG 2013. And they provided us with a forward, and the same also for Build UK. And we were very grateful for their support too. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll stop the presentation for now, and then I'm going to switch across to the e-portal to show you how it works. So this is the e-portal. As you can see, it's opened in the browser. If I just show you, if you scroll down, it gives you a little bit of introduction about what the e-portal is, what's new in TG20, the compliance sheets and so on. And also, if you keep going, you'll see that if you've got the TG 2013 eGUIDE, there's also a free subscription period where you can try out the portal. And the links to subscribe at the bottom. If I head back to the top and log in, I'll just show you the operational guide and design guide first. And as you can see, you've got the table of contents down the side, or with the next and previous buttons along the bottom, you can kind of page through the guidance. And also you can search. So if I wanted to find everything that was new on loading bays, for example, you can search for loading bay, and then you'll find all of the sections with the text highlighted wherever it appears. And then what's new as well, if you go right down to the end of the document and into the appendix, there's a section here on the changes from TG 2013, and they're all tabulated with the sections describing what's changed. And in any of these cases, you can jump straight there. So for example, if I go to the loading bays again and then click, you can go straight to the loading bay chapter. So that's the operational guide, and the design guide, very similar. Again, you can search, you can step through, and at the end, we've got the index of changes in the appendix, along with the index of figures and tables. So if you need to be able to jump to any of them quickly, you can go straight there. And these pages are all designed to be to work on a computer-sized screen or a tablet, or they'll scale down to a phone-sized display as well. So if I head back to the home page and go into the eGUIDE, so you'll see that as in TG 2013, you can choose a scaffold type, but we've extended it with the new ones. So the independent scaffold options for 3 inside boards and the attached loading bays are in the independent scaffold option. But we've got a new one for external bird cages. And if you scroll down, we've also got the new option here for mobile towers. If I just start with an independent scaffold. Now the first step with an independent scaffold, once that loads up, is to choose the site location. And if you've enabled it, and if you've got a GPS, it can find where you are. If you've got a phone or a tablet, or you can search. And you can search by postcode, address, or business name. So if I start searching for the NASC, for example, you can use the Google Complete to pick up the address. And then behind the scenes, this calculates the site win factor. This has been significantly improved since TG 2013. So a lot of the options that you had to choose manually in TG 2013 are completely automated now. So for example, the wind factor calculation will pick up whether your site is in town, and if so, how far within the town in each wind direction, and how much sheltering that it gets from other buildings, for example. So the wind calculation is completely automated. Choose next. And then you can see the preview of the scaffold that's going to get built up as we choose each option. And the options are very much like the TG2013 eGUIDE, and they're mostly in the same order as well to keep it as easy as possible to switch from one to the other. So you can start by selecting the lift height, whether 2 meters or 3 meter maximum lifts. If I stick with 2 meters, but what's new is you can now modify the dimensions of the scaffold, again, just a representative elevation, and then it's updated on the screen. If we choose next, and then the other new option is you can choose how many lifts are boarded. So you can choose fully boarded or top 2 lifts, or in fact, you can choose any number of boarded lifts. They're drawn assuming that the boarded lifts are at the top, but in practice, they can be in any order as long as you don't exceed the maximum number. And you can also choose whether to provide ladder access landings. As in the previous eGUIDE, you can choose the maximum working load. If I say it's a general purpose scaffold, you can choose the platform width, and now you can go up to 3 inside boards. You can choose whether to add any brick guards, debris netting or sheeting. Let's try some debris netting. And just with TG2013, you can choose whether to use prefabricated structural transom units, so Radiarc style transoms or not. And if you do, the eGUIDE will work out whether you can omit the ledger bracing or whether it should be provided. But I'll just choose tube and fitting transoms. You can choose whether to use type 4 steel tubes or the TG20 compliant high tensile steel. I'll just choose type 4. Then this is where you can start to choose additional features. So this first set are for pedestrian protection. So you can add a pavement lift, in which case a representation of the pavement lift is shown. You can also choose to add a light duty fan. In fact, you can just spin that round and then you can see it a little bit better. Because we chose a pavement lift, actually the same as in the previous eGUIDE, you can choose how it's stabilized, whether with ties or plan bracing, for example. I'll just leave it tied. You can choose the lift for the cantilever fan, and you can see that in preference, it will support the fan with tubes underneath to reduce the risk of any falling materials bouncing off the tube. But if you do put it right along the bottom, then it will support it with hangers from above. You can also choose whether to put a bridge in. I'll do that. I'll put in a 3-bay bridge. And then if so, I'll just move that so you can see a bit better. And then if so, you can position the bridge. You can choose which lift and which position to place it at. You can also choose whether to provide an inner cantilever platform. If you don't have a bridge, you can also put a cantilever platform up to 5 boards wide on as well. And you can also apply an external ladder access tower or a loading bay. I won't try to put them all on at the same time, but I'll show you the loading bay in a minute. And something else that's new actually in the new eGUIDE is once the compliance calculations are completed, it will offer you all the valid TG20 compliant tie patterns that apply to this scaffold. So in this case, if we wanted to, we could even use tie pattern C or F, and it will recalculate the tie duty accordingly. If I stick with pattern A, then we get to the end. So what you get is the preview of the illustration, just as it will appear on the compliance sheet, along with the compliance badges. Because we placed a bridge as well, if you look at the arrows, you can page across and see a detail of the bridge as well. And in this case, you can see that the bridge has a greater leg load at the standard supporting the bridge, as you'd expect. And you can also see from this icon that you need double standards at the supporting standards too. And then you can complete the contract details. So we can give it a contract number and a client. You can put in a scaffold reference, the details of the person producing the compliance sheet and some notes. And then if required, you can also provide checkers details as well and upload your company logo. If I hit Save PDF, it will generate the compliance sheet and download it. And in a couple of seconds' time, open it up. And then you can see the PDF has the pages for the scaffold and all of the additional features combined. So the first page has the illustration of the scaffold, the compliance badges and the sign-off area. Down to the second page, you get the detailed compliance criteria for the independent scaffold. And you can also see that we have 3 additional features ticked on for the pavement lift, the fan and the bridge. So because we have some additional features, we have some additional pages for the compliance sheet as well. So we got the cutaway illustration for the bridge with the additional leg loads. The details of the compliance, again with the beam specification and the fixing details. Another sheet for the pavement lift and another sheet for the fan. Just to show you quickly, I'll just take some of these off, just make it a bit clearer. With the loading bay, if you choose this option, you also get a cutaway of the loading bay as well. And again, with these arrows, you can cycle between the loading bay, the main scaffold, and also the ladder access tower if you have one. And if you choose next, you can also choose which type of loading bay you want. So we've got 2 options with beams, the one that's 6+2 or 10 boards wide, which you can see here, this is the 6+2. Also, we've got the options without beams as well. Again, I'm not quite sure actually if this cable's going to be a bit high. Oh, no, it's going to be okay. And you can see the option here without beams has this reduced bay length. So again, you choose the tie pattern, and then when you use the arrows, you can now see the loading bay on plan section and elevation, and then download the compliance sheet for that. And if I just show you one more example, if I show you the external birdcage. Again, because it's an external scaffold, you can choose the site location for the wind exposure. I'll just choose the NASC office again. And as before, you get a representation of the scaffold of the birdcage. Again, it's a representative rectangular shape, but the birdcage could be other shapes as needed. You choose the maximum loading. So if I choose a light duty birdcage, for example, it will adjust the bay length accordingly. You can adjust the scaffold height up to a maximum of 10.5 meters. I'll just stick with about 6.5 for now. And then you can choose whether the birdcage is tied in both directions or whether it's tied in one direction and freestanding in the other, or it can be butted in one or both directions or completely freestanding. If I say it's tied in one direction, you can choose which direction the ties are in. And in the opposite direction, you will see that the facade bracing uses the continuous pattern to the top lift. You can then enter in the length and width, and of course, particularly because this is a scaffold that's freestanding in one direction, this is quite important for the compliance calculation for the overturning. And then also new, you can choose how many lifts are boarded, including the option for fully boarded, which is new, or perimeter boarded. I'll just show you perimeter boarded so you can see how it looks, and then it puts the boards around the edge of the scaffold. And that's going to check that that's okay. And it will work out the tie positions that you need. For an internal birdcage, it's always tied at the top lift at alternate standards, but for an external birdcage, it will work out what tie pattern it needs. In this particular case, it's tied at every standard at alternate lifts. That depends on the wind exposure and the scaffold dimensions. But again, as before, you get the illustrations, plan section and elevation, and the compliance badges. And you can complete the sign-off details and then download the compliance sheet. And just as before, the illustration and the compliance badges on the first page, and then the detail criteria on the second page. And here you can see, for example, because it's an external birdcage and freestanding in one direction, it gives you, for example, the maximum freestanding height to base ratio, which is 1:1 for the external birdcage. Okay, so that's the new NASC e-portal and TG2021 eGUIDE. I hope you like it. And do you have any questions?
Thanks very much, Terry. We have 2 questions at the moment, which I will go through. Please feel free, everyone else, to kind of drop your questions in. Let's begin. Has anyone queried using toe boards on the fans?
Yes, this has been requested actually. It's not part of the TG20 compliant fan in TG2013, and we haven't extended it in 2021 either, but it is on the list as a possibility. So we've got a list of requests, and that's in there. So as we one of the things we're going to do with TG2021 now that it's online is it's going to be much easier for us to periodically update it and improve it. So we're going to be working with the NASC to work out what sequence we're going to do that in. And adding toe boards to the end of the fan is one of those things.
With regards to rubbish chutes, does the vertical height 10-metre recommendations not need input from a designer, i.e. can it be added to a compliance scaffold by the scaffolder making the decision?
Yes, it can, yes. So that 10 metres just comes from TG3, I think it is, isn't it? The technical guidance for rubbish chutes. As a recommendation, I think it just says there that the NASC consider 10 metres to be a reasonable maximum for a rubbish chute rather than some other method. But yes, if you have you need design input for the rubbish chute anyway. So if your designer wants to do something different, that's absolutely fine.
Okay. What is the honeymoon period before TG2013 is withdrawn?
That's a good question. There's a sort of a kind of bedding in period of 3 months, which kind of goes with the 3 months free for the TG2013 users. And that's why we're still just making sure that everything's all okay. And then after that period, the aim is to print the printed copies of the operational guide and the design guide. There will then be a period when the two are overlapping. I'm not completely sure if the NAC have decided exactly what they're going to do for that and have released a date, but I'm sure that's something that will be released soon. But yes, there will be a period of overlap. And of course, jobs that are already running with TG2013 don't have to jump across to 2021.
Thank you. Do you intend to issue any operational manuals?
Oh, the printed one, yes. So the user guide is actually being printed at the moment because it's not available on the e-portal. That's coming out first. It's my understanding that will start going out at the end of this month, actually. And then, yes, the operational and design guides will follow. So that's going to, yes, probably from July onwards, I think.
On the loading bays attached to the scaffolds, will it just be tied to the outside standard as per the recent illustration, as some prefer to go through both the standards?
So it's just the outside standards. I'm not quite sure what you mean, actually. There, maybe just drop me a line afterwards. But yeah, I mean, it's tied at the end standards all the way through. Alternate lifts for every lift. I'm not quite sure if the standards are doubled up. Or not sure. Maybe drop me a line later, and I'll see if I can answer what you mean.
When will the eGUIDE be available in the Middle East?
Yeah, that's a good question. We are intending to provide more wind factor calculations for other countries. The main thing we need to do is go through and find the wind data that we need for each country in a manner that's compliant with the Eurocode, if you see what I mean. So the Middle East is very much on the list.
Thank you. I've got a question here that I think I can answer. Will a copy of this presentation be circulated to attendees? Yes, it will. And also we are recording this webinar, and it'll be uploaded to YouTube and sent out to all delegates as well, so you can watch it back. So you don't need to take notes. I probably should have told you that at the beginning. Sorry about that. That concludes the questions we have to date. So if anyone's got any questions that they'd like to ask Terry while you've got him, please, I'll give you another minute or two. If not, I think we can conclude the session. Let's just see what comes in. Oh, here's one. Are the compliance sheet drawings for the external birdcage as shown on the slide indicative with regards to the bracing, or are they as shown mandatory for inspection?
That's a good question, because all the illustrations are indicative to a point, really, because the thing with the eGUIDE is you're really just choosing the compliance criteria, and it's not a drawing program, you know, for a designer, for example. So it's going to be showing, it shows a representative rectangular elevation for the independent and a sort of representative rectangular birdcage as well. So on site, your birdcage might well be a slightly different, you know, different shape or sort of plan shape. And in those cases, you just need to follow the compliance criteria with regard to the maximum spacing. So for example, if single bay bracing is permitted, it will state that and the maximum spacing, but if you require bracing to the top lift, it will state that too. Particularly for a freestanding birdcage, if you're not following exactly what's on the compliance sheet, you do just have to be careful to follow what's in the operational guide. The other one that's very similar is with the tie patterns as well, because in TG 2013 we didn't try to show the tie positions on the compliance sheet, and you just had to follow the text instructions. We kind of got the opposite problem with TG 2021 in that we show the positions as best we can for the standard pattern, but of course on site, if you have to do something slightly different, you can do that as long as you're following the guidance in the book and the maximum spacings on the back of the compliance sheet. So that's very important when it comes to scaffold inspection, that what's on the illustration shows the principal design criteria, but it's not necessarily an exact drawing of the scaffold that's going to be, it's not construction drawing of the scaffold. So that's just something to bear in mind.
One more just coming. When we are assisting a company towards NASC membership, when will you be enforcing TG 2021 in audits, both new and existing biannual? One for you there, Terry?
It's one for you, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it probably is. I'll tell you what I'll do at this stage. I am going to promote to the panel Dave Mosley from CISRS, because we have another question. How do you intend to roll out the updates to training providers? So I'll hand over to Dave now. Should be joining us.
Right, it's gone again.
Here he comes.
I've
gone with a CISRS background. Afternoon, everybody. Yeah, just with regard to including the audit, obviously it's a case of when one's phased out and the other one goes. And roughly what we're looking to do is after the books are issued, we'll probably have a 3-month period then, bedding in period. So towards the end of the year, TG20 will be faded out. Obviously, existing scaffolds that are already up, TG 2021 doesn't apply retrospectively. Those jobs that were up to the old design still work, so that will be fine. Really, all I wanted to say was thank you for joining us today, the providers. I hope it's been helpful to you. I hope you've all taken advantage of the funded, CISRS-supported TG20s to all the centres. And just really on the PowerPoints, just to let you know, we're currently working on all the PowerPoints from a TG20 point of view, and hopefully they will be available next week, and we will reissue them with all from the awareness up to the advanced course with the new TG20 information in it. Some of the courses do still need further review, etc., and when they're due to be updated anyway. But from the TG20 point of view, all of them will have been updated by next week and issued. Thank you very much. If there is any more questions while Terry's here, please do take advantage of it, because he's like an encyclopedia and it's very good to watch. Thanks very much.
There's no more questions as we stand, so I'll give it another countdown clock of 30 seconds or so, but if not, thanks very much for attending, everyone. I hope you found it useful, and we'll call it a day. Okay, let's have a look. More burning questions. Doesn't look like it. So thank you very much. We'll end it there. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.